So I hope that today will be a stimulating experience. We are also trying to bridge theory and practice, bridge academic rigor with the freshest insights of contemporary activism.
And what's also, I think, really noticeable is just how widespread this phenomena of discontent is. I think often people portray discontent as something which is held by the younger generations more than the older generations, but actually the survey evidence tells us that the people who are really, really pissed off with politics are the older generations. And of course, there's a well-known explanation of that, which is the life cycle explanation, which is they've experienced crap politics for a long time. One of the things that we did in a nice piece of survey work was we asked people whether or not if politics changed, would you be more likely to get engaged? And all the old people, I'm glad to say, conformed entirely to stereotypes, said, no, I'm not going to be changing. But all the young people said, oh yeah, well if politics got better, then yes, maybe we would more likely engage.
Look at visits numbers. 2002, in the UK Parliament they had about 10,000 visits. 2013 about 65 visits, so huge increases. In different parliaments it's exactly the same story. But to Brazil they had an amazing programme for different types of ages, and that really is an area that parliaments have tried to address. Because, going back to the principle I was saying in the beginning, is that reasoning that if they understand us, if they know about us, they'll love us. So you start from early on.
I've now done more presentations to parliamentarians than I care to remember, and mostly ended up just incredibly angry at the end of the discussions because I kind of become madder and madder in the discussions. And I think the last time I ended up by saying, well, you're just crazy, you're not prepared to change, then a great tsunami will sweep over you.
The basic point to remember here is that liberal democracy emerged as a defensive mechanism against the ever-present spectre of organised dissent against capitalism, and in direct opposition for pressures for a more free and equal and genuinely democratic system. Capitalism and more genuine democracy are thus in fundamental contradiction, and liberal democracy functions to paper over this.
I think that the political science profession has done, I think, disappointingly little to challenge or to dislodge or to question this tendency to equate politics with ideologically mainstream institutional politics. And I think this tendency to work with a rather narrow and conceptually limiting understanding of politics is unfortunately pervasive not just across public debate but also within the political science profession.
We're interested in this kind of autonomous impulse within radical left politics, which were kind of social and spatial forms which could open up new forms of citizenship and relationships, right? What I'm interested in are these niche spaces of experimentation, what potentials they represent, right? Going forward for imagining and embedding post-capitalist forms of life, and I use post-capitalist there in a particular way.
Well, I mean, fundamentally, the main message about the ballot isn't to go and vote. You know, the first sort of port of call is to engage with the issues you care about, because, you know, I alluded to it earlier, most young people will spend a lot of time talking about made-up people and made-up TV shows and their made-up lives, rather than thinking, what is going on with ours and how do we change it?
So we thought, well, what do we do with this election? What's the point of carrying on, talking to the people we know aren't going to vote, encouraging not to vote? Let's do something different and see where it leads us. And where it's led us actually is in doing direct action and highlighting issues. And it's a way of engaging with people, and suddenly we're able to talk to them about anarchism and talk to them about class politics in a way that we haven't been able to do. So, you know, I can understand people thinking that I'm trying to reinforce the or I'm inadvertently reinforcing the system, but what I'm trying to do is actually promote anarchism in a different way.
If it does actually prove to be a farce and mass engagement has then resulted in nothing, then I think then the revolution can actually have real foundations to stand on, because we've proved this system doesn't work.
I'd love to see a website that encourages political engagement. It doesn't. It encourages voting. And that's my problem with it. I want it to be much wider. I want it actually to be a force for progressive change. I don't think it should be promoting right-wing parties. I think it should be about how do we actually get change? How do we get the kind of change we want? Why doesn't it actually promote something? Because you know nothing is ever truly neutral. And I can understand you wanting to be party political neutral, but it isn't, and nothing ever is. If you try to be neutral, what you end up doing is just backing up the status quo. And that's the risk that you've taken, and that is actually, I think, what you're doing.
But it's still early days for us. I think, you know, we've this past 5 years has actually been entering a landscape that for many of us we had no idea. None of us come from political education. Many of our parents had never voted. So we've entered this very naively in the beginning, like, oh my God, we found a way of getting people to register to vote. Bumble off to the Department for Education and say, guys, the curriculum's missing this, let's help, and quickly realise that actually they really like it that most young people don't engage and are not registered because they're the easiest to let down. And we fought battle after battle. After the election, and a good few nights sleep, it's going to be an opportunity to step back and say, what have we learned here and what do we really want?